Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Cultural Fix CLE. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the editor of Cultural Fix CLE, Joshua Lawhorn. Joshua, if that name sounds familiar, he also worked on Olympic Oats, a film recently shared in Cleveland about Jesse Owens. Hello, Joshua, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Eric.
It's great to have you and great to see you again and have you working on another local project. This is great, Cultural Fix CLE. I mean, who knew? Who knew? And I know a lot of the artwork has eroded over times, but it's still, great to have that type of impact there. So did you know about this before you were asked to edit the film?
I did not know about the art installations before working on the film, but once I started editing the project, I quickly, started to notice, oh, there's another one. There's another one around town. It was pretty cool.
It is cool. It is cool. This film was directed by Susan Wasserman, and she asked you to edit the film. Is Susan someone you worked with before, or how did the two of you connect for you to edit this film?
So I did not. I've not worked with Susan in the past. Susan, they had shot the footage probably a year prior to editing it, and it was just kind of sitting on the cutting room floor, and they were, kind of figuring out like we have to do something with it. So they reached out to the company that I work for, which is Flex Media, and they hired us for editing services. And it was pretty awesome working on it. Normally everything that I edit, I've shot, so I've never really edited other people's footage, and it was just nice to see that there are other filmmakers in town that are doing great work, and I really enjoyed the shots, and the editing process was a breeze.
So since it was a breeze, does that mean that you had creative control over it, or were you given strict guidelines from Susan?
So the guidelines were that the film should be somewhere around 10 to 11 minutes. But when she handed over the hard drive, I pretty much had like full creative freedom to do whatever I wanted. That's where the idea of the band-aids, and the credits and it came from. It was just like I wanted to figure out how to do something, motion graphics wise, creatively to really bring this whole thing together and showcase some of Day Day's artwork. Um, and I would say that it only took about a week to really get through the edit. There were some changes, but not a substantial amount.
So, the footage that you received, did you use all the footage? Was there some footage that you did not use, or some footage that you wish you had in making this film?
Um, we used most of the footage. There was a lot of the same coverage over and over again. We did want to shoot some interviews of members of the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection because we felt that their voice was necessary in this story, to kind of help bring in Day Day as a character. And then there was also one shot in particular, Nitzan Mintz, who is Day Day Band-Aid's fiance. She is a poet and she does murals as well. So we didn't have any footage of that, so I wanted to go capture that. That's over on Coventry.
Okay. That's good that you were able to shoot some of your own footage and it
Hmm.
blended in well. I mean, what you shot and what Susan handed over to you, you couldn't tell that they were different uh,
Thank you.
people shooting the film. What was the most challenging aspect of putting this together, or maybe night? Was there a
I,
challenge?
I would say the most challenging part was finding footage of Day Day from Israel because I really wanted, nobody knows who he is. I mean, they know who he is in America now, hopefully from this film. But I wanted to kind of showcase like his story, and so I had to really go dig and I was able to find some archival footage of him like actually hanging up band-aids around Tel Aviv. And then I also wanted to, I had to go find like pictures of the original Culture Fix, which took place in Tel Aviv, and but they were very low resolution. So I kind of had to upscale them using some AI. I know it's a big talking point right now, but I didn't degrade the photos. Thank God.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So, tell us about the reception of the film when you showed it to Susan. What was her response?
Oh, she loved it. She said she was moved to tears. Everyone we showed it to, same thing. Like they were just blown away at how powerful the story was, and how much it represented their community in a positive light.
Hmm. And let's talk a little bit about the pacing of the film, because to move someone to tears, I don't think that was your goal. You just wanted to tell a story. But again, the pacing of the film and the edits and the cutaways and so forth, the use of the B-roll, the music and all that. What kind of feel were you going for as you were putting this together?
Um, Hopeful is a word I would say. Um, I always like to edit documentaries in a linear fashion. I just think that, that tells the most honest and authentic version of the story. And thankfully, the way the footage was shot, it was like literally, it was like, okay, this section's this section's this section's this, and I could just go through. And I wanted to give a hopeful message that people would watch this and they would have like a feel good moment, because so often in documentaries, it seems like the most popular documentaries right now are like true crime documentaries and murder. And it's like, it's nice to give like a hopeful story to an audience.
It is, and it's just the whole creativity of it as well too, because some editors slash directors put so much into their work, and which is actually taken away from the content of the film. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this concept of the whole band-aids, it wasn't, you just let it shine itself. You just
Mm-hmm.
let the art come to life without trying to put a lot of fast cuts and, transitions and so forth. You just let the story unfold.
Yeah, that was a happy accident. The band-aids, it was like that hadn't even occurred to me until late in the editing process. And it was like it was such an epiphany moment because it's like this guy, like this band-aid helped him heal in a moment in his life. I of course I have to incorporate this throughout. And and it was painstaking, but it was it was very rewarding.
And indeed, indeed. The title of the film, is that something that Susan came up with, or did the two of you collaborate for the title of this film?
So that was actually Day Day's idea, Culture Fix. It was the so during 2020 there was, I don't know if there's this, if you know about this, there's this thing called coronavirus, and artists in Tel Aviv, they couldn't get work, they weren't making money, and so Day Day and Itzan came up with this idea called Culture Fix, where they were going to put the band-aids on artists, take pictures, and then install them around Tel Aviv, and they were going to hold a festival, and it was a huge success. And the subsidiary of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection, caught wind of this. I think they'd traveled over to Tel Aviv and they'd seen the installations, and they knew someone who got in touch with Day Day, and they decided to bring him here. And they were just going to continue that whole idea of Culture Fix, but name it Culture Fix CLE. And there have since been, I believe, a Culture Fix London. I want to say there was a Culture Fix New York. Could be incorrect, but I know that he's done other Culture Fixes around the world.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
Yeah,
Well, you may have a lot more work ahead of you if they want to culture
absolutely.
fix in different cities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Too. Is there anything you wish you had done differently?
Um, I wish that I wouldn't have had to cut. I had to cut like about 13 seconds off, and I really didn't understand why, because I think that like it didn't take away from the story, and it only added. But other than that, no.
Can you share with us those 13 seconds you had to cut off?
It was just about how so Day Day's an anonymous street artist, and he started drawing band-aids around town, and then he would hang out in coffee shops and restaurants or whatever, and he would hear people talking about the band-aid guy. And just cutting that line, it was like, he's the band-aid guy. Like, of course he's the band-aid guy. I felt it was necessary to keep in the story. But if you didn't know it wasn't there, then you wouldn't know.
Exactly. It doesn't impact the final
Yeah.
outcome of the film. I understand you didn't know any of the subjects ahead of time, and now you know them.
Yeah.
Have you tell us what it was like to meet some of the subjects?
They were just over the moon that like this there was a film with them in it, and they were just very happy to be a part of the project. I know DJ Doc was just very respectful. He actually ended up writing a song and performing it at the most recent there was like a get together about a month ago at the Jewish Fed, and he was just so happy.
Oh, great. So I know this screened at the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival,
Mm-hmm.
also, of course, at the Cleveland International Film Festival. Is it still on the film festival circuit or has it screened
It is
out?
not. It just ended its festival run. I do not know if we're going to be distributing it anywhere. Um, I'll have to talk to Susan about that. But it did end its festival run, and it got into three film festivals: Chagrin, of course, CIFF, and the Jewish Mandel Film Festival. And we
Great,
were very happy to be a part of all three of those.
great. Some of our students who are watching this interview right now are filmmakers themselves, and some of them may be aspiring to be filmmakers or be editors. What advice would you give them if they really want to focus on editing?
I would say you just have to start, learn as much as you can. Editing is a different beast in that you can't sit behind someone and learn how to do it. You just have to open up your editing software and get started, and you can learn new tips and tricks from YouTube, master classes. There are various online courses that you can take, but you just have to. It's a journey, and you have to work at it, and you have to be willing to sit there and just rewind forward, back and forth, just obsessing about each picture. And if you're that type of personality, then you're perfect for editing. There's a lot of people that can't do that. It's a special skill. I really think that films are made in the editing room. There's the film that's written, there's the film that's shot, but if you don't have a good editor, then you might not be able to tell your story properly.
So, what do you think that students should learn first? Should they, some say, I want to be an editor, should I learn Premiere, Avid, or just anything they can get their hands on?
Well, DaVinci's free. I do not work in DaVinci, but DaVinci's free. It's very quickly becoming the industry standard, especially for color. But it does, you can get in there and edit. Um, I prefer Premiere, but if you don't have the money, you got to start somewhere. So the sky's the limit. You can download Premiere for free, or you can download DaVinci for free, and just get in there and start editing. And there's various, like I said, YouTube tutorials that'll teach you how to get through that.
Exactly, because editing is editing. in terms of putting things together. Each software just all operates the same, but they just all have their own particular
Yeah.
way of using them in that sense. So how did you get into editing? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I took an editing class at CSU, and I just fell in love with it. I'm able to I'm one of those people that's just able to sit in a chair for 12 hours in the dark and just obsess and go over footage and put together a story. I like the idea of crafting the story. It's almost like music to me.
And
It just comes together.
and how does editing on this project compare to some of the other projects you edited? Did you find this just as challenging, less challenging? What's the difference between this project and maybe another project?
I felt like cutting the story together was probably the easiest I've ever cut a short film together. But the challenging part was adding in the extra motion graphics. I really learned and came to appreciate animation a little bit more because of that. Um, yeah, not having to shoot it, was a nice change of pace. Well, not having to shoot most of it.
Understandable, because you came at this with a fresh point. You weren't already, you know, um,
Married to the idea,
exactly immersed in
yeah,
it. You
yeah,
just came
yeah,
at it with fresh energy, and
yeah.
I
Hmm.
can understand why Susan was so pleased about this. Now, the the motion that you put in the film, is that something that you thought it needed to be done, or you just had the extra time? He says, "Well, I can take it up a notch." Tell us about your idea of putting the motion in the film.
So I put the motion in the film because one of the requests was to have the photos. There were the photos that were taken and then blown up life size and hung up around town. But then they also took a cell phone image, and most of them were in 9 by 16, so they were vertical. And I was like, well, I don't want to have all this black space on the opposite side. Like, what can I do to kind of mask this? And that's where the Band-Aid idea came from. And it only started out as like a border around, the top of the screen and around. And then I was like, oh, I can add this to other parts of the film, and it'll add like a nice sense of cohesiveness to it.
Right, great. And well, the music in the film, how did you decide on that? Was it something from the library you had, or someone you knew?
Yeah, so we use a sound library called Soundstripe. It's relatively inexpensive, and it has a vast library for documentary films. And each song that I chose was a different emotion that I wanted to convey at that moment in the film. If I
Right.
wanted it to be joyful, it was joyful. If I wanted it to be somber, it was somber.
In your style of editing, do you lay in the music at the end, or do you lay it in as you go along? What is your preference?
It kind of depends. I think it makes it easier if you laid in at the beginning, but then it can kind of feel almost like a music video-ish. So if it's a narrative, I usually like to lay the footage out first and then start adding in the music. But for documentaries, it just depends on the scene. It really does, because I have an idea for it sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I want to go with this, and then I want to cut along this, cut along these beats. But I would say that more often than not, I'm cutting the footage first and then adding the music in afterwards.
Right. A lot of people use that approach. Finally, tell me one of your tips or tricks that you do as an editor. Everyone has like their own little tricks and quirks that they do, but what's one of the things that you do that you can pass along?
Um, I try to find, for at least for documentaries, I try to find the most powerful quote that's going to hook you, and that is kind of what I that's what helps me start and helps guide me through the whole process of telling the story. Once I find that one quote, I know, like, okay, this is the theme of the story. This is what I'm going to use to just help this flower bloom.
And that quote in this film was from who? I don't know if you recall. Or...
It was from Day Day. It was him talking about how the Band-Aid appealed to him. And it plays in the very beginning. It's on the shot where it's like it starts on his eyeball and then it just zooms way out.
Cool.
And I think he said it kind of appealed to me, this Band-Aid.
Exactly. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good tip. What's next for you? Are you working on anything now that we can see soon?
So we are doing a follow-up to Culture Fix CLE called Kidnapped from Israel. Kind of coincidentally, the day that Culture Fix CLE debuted at Chagrin and worldwide was on October 7th. It was definitely a moment that we all remember. And so Day Day and It's On were not in Tel Aviv at that moment in time, but they had friends that were, and were at the festival. They were in New York, and they were working on another art installation, and were completely sidelined by those events, and were kind of inspired to do another project. They abandoned their project that they were working on, and they did another project called Kidnapped from Israel. And they were what they did was they collaborated with an artist back in Tel Aviv named Tal Hubert to find photos of the victims who were kidnapped and or murdered and put them up on posters that said kidnapped at the top, and they hung them around New York. And that kind of spread like wildfire throughout the international community. So we're doing another short film that tells the story of how that project came to be and what the aftermath was.
Interesting. Is that something we can see soon or still?
We are currently in production. There is a teaser trailer, but I don't know if we're ready to send it out yet. We're trying to get funding for it. So once I have some confirmation, I will get in contact with you and I'll send that over.
That sounds great. Joshua Lawhorn, editor of Culture Fix CLE, thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you much luck and much more success.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.